attempt to murder. So now in the amended complaint and information, you see the 10 murder victims listed. As you may recall, they are listed in chronological order. In other words, in the sequence in which things took place in King Soopers on March 22nd. So there were 9 civilian victims who were murdered, and then Officer Eric Talley, who entered King Soopers along with fellow police officers. And as you will recall, there were no civilians shot or killed after law enforcement entered King Soopers. So Officer Talley is listed as the 10th murder victim. There are also now 15 civilian victims of attempted murder. Those are also listed in the order and sequence in which we believe those events took place, as well as a total of 11 victims of attempted murder who were serving as members of law enforcement on March 22nd and had responded to King Soopers in response to the calls for help. Each of those charges carry with them a sentence to state prison, and it's our belief that those sentences could run consecutive. And what I mean by that is one on top of the other. For the murder counts, the maximum sentence in the state of Colorado is life without the possibility of parole. For the attempted murder counts, the sentencing range is 16 to 48 years in state prison. Since we last met, I also just wanted to highlight that our office reviewed and announced a decision on the officer-involved shooting that took place on March 22nd in response to the horrific attack that was ongoing. Officer Stidel was the individual who had fired his firearm at the individual in King Soopers. Based on our thorough analysis, it was determined that Officer Stidel's actions were justified, so he was cleared of any wrongdoing or criminal conduct in the shooting. That decision was reached on May 6th. In fact, I can share with you that on Mother's Day, my family came into town and happened to run into Officer Stidel on patrol, because he was back on patrol that weekend after being cleared from the officer-involved shooting investigation. The next court date in this matter is now set for September 7th. The court put it on for what's called a proof evident presumption great hearing. As you know, the next step in the criminal process is a preliminary hearing where the court determines whether probable cause exists to hold the defendant and for the case to move forward. When the defendant's being held without bond, as in this case, the defendant's entitled under Article 2, Section 19 of the state constitution to a hearing on whether the proof is evident or the presumption is great. That hearing is now scheduled for 9 a.m. on September 7th. We anticipate that that hearing will take 1 day. And I'm happy to take any questions you have before I get back to work.
What's the official name that you gave on that hearing again? I'm sorry.
Proof evident, presumption great.
Has there been any discussion yet brought up by the defense about competency to stand?
So in any case that would involve a mental health defense of any kind, there's a specific process that the court has to follow. You would hear that raised, if it's raised at all, in open court. There was nothing about that in court today.
Mike, for the layperson, could you explain how the logic behind the attempted murder charges? You touched on it briefly, but again, for someone who doesn't know the law, how these attempted murder charges play out when it comes to charging the individual.
And what do you mean by that? I'm sorry.
Well, I mean, you have such an array of charges, and the 9 attempted murder charges, and so he tried to kill 9 other people.
So there's 2 theories under which murder or attempted murder could be charged. One is that the individual acted with intent. So for murder, it's with intent and after deliberation, and with attempted murder, it's with intent. So in other words, someone points a gun at an individual, just a general hypothetical, and pulls the trigger but misses. That would be an attempted murder that was committed with intent.
So you believe when officers entered the store that day, he attempted to kill whoever he could?
There's a number of different victims who are alleged victims of attempted murder. The other theory under which attempted murder could be charged is when an individual acts with universal malice and causes someone to be their life to be endangered.
I also have a question for
Sure.
kind of just the layperson. You know, given that the murder charges alone each carry a sentence of life in prison without parole, can you just talk a little bit about behind why also bring charges that are for the sentence enhancers, like use of a deadly weapon during commission of a crime, things like that?
That's a really good question. So under the state constitution, every victim has a right to be heard and to be supported, to have access to resources, and to have their voice heard in court. So that's why for each one of the victims who were either the target of the individual's actions here for murder or attempted murder, they're being named in this complaint information to make sure that justice is done for each and every one of them, and then each and every one has a voice in this process, and that's why it's so important for us to detail those allegations. Also, in order to present a full case to the jury, it's important that we have all the charges listed so the jury is informed of what they're being asked to consider, and also so the defense is on full notice as to what charges are being presented against their client and what evidence would be presented in support of those charges.
Can you tell what is the total number of attempted murder victims?
So 15 civilian victims of attempted murder, 11 victims of attempted murder who are law enforcement, so that's 26 total. Some of the victims are listed under different theories, so they're named more than once in the complaint and information, but total it's 26 individuals who are alleged victims of attempted murder.
26 different separate attempted murders.
That's correct, yes.
This went very quickly in court. Can you just run down what took place?
Sure. So we were in court today for a status conference. The court clerk had reached out in advance to see what date or dates would work for the next hearing, which I really truly appreciate given the number of attorneys and trial schedules involved. So the clerk and the parties had agreed upon September 7th. So we went to court. We knew that the hearing would be set for September 7th. We made a brief record as to the victims and their right to be present for every court proceeding, including via WebEx today. And then the court adjourned the case for September 7th for that hearing that I referenced.
Is the investigation ongoing, and do you have any new information that has been uncovered, perhaps in the defendant's electronic devices?
So it's obviously a major investigation, and to answer your question, yes, it's still ongoing. I mean, it's such a horrific attack involving so many people and a long list of allegations. So the investigation is ongoing. One thing I would say before I get back to work is just the response has been incredibly positive by this community. When I think about the support for the victims, the support for the community, and how Boulder's come together and how the state of Colorado has come together for everyone involved, it's been tremendous. So I greatly respect and value how much support's being given to the victims and their loved ones and to this community. And I appreciate you being here today, so thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
Thanks for your help.